Welcome. Merrill Chandler here, your host of the Fundability Podcast. In this episode, I get kind of mad, just so you know. I go off on lenders and their lack of implementing fiduciary responsibility. We won't define it now, but lenders, one more time, are looking to skate through and use the lack of sophistication of borrowers to take advantage of profits and fund various and sundry purchases and especially training programs in order to capitalize on the ignorance of borrowers and, once again, create unnecessary debt for borrowers, especially in this case, students. I will see you on the inside.
In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable Podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Welcome, everybody. Whew. Like I said in the intro, this podcast is about how buy now, pay later is now getting super sketch. No joke. In this episode, we're going to be discussing buy now, pay later, also known as BNPL. It's going everywhere. PayPal, Afterpay, Klarna, Affirm. These are organizations who are basically offering services to merchants, companies, everywhere from Amazon to furniture stores, Target, Apple equipment. They are allowing them, just like they take a Visa or MasterCard and run that card or input that information, and then it goes on to a credit line or a credit limit, and then you make payments until it's paid to zero. These are more installment loan versions. Where credit card is a revolving account, right? Charge it up, pay it off, charge it up, pay it off. These are not revolving accounts in most instances. We'll get to that in a moment. These are mini installment loan. Buy now, pay later literally means 2, 3, 5, 6 payments of equal monthly installments to retire whatever purchase price. So let's say you go to a Nordstrom and they say, would you like to put this on your buy now, pay later? And they'll split it instead of paying $200 now, it's 4 payments of $50. Now, it does, buy now, pay later services do not cost you, the borrower, the consumer, the buyer, anything. Once again, fees are paid by the merchant. So the merchant accepts the fact, yep, I'm going to use Klarna. Klarna is going to make it easy for people to buy my goods, so it's worth the 3, 5, 10% that they charge. Buy now, pay later, by the way, is more expensive than the 3 to 5% charged by Visa, MasterCard, or the processing fees by Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express credit card processing services. So 2 different. One adds to a credit card a limit. These buy now, pay later are installment loans. First thing we need to understand. Now, they're trying to go for market share, these buy now, pay later institutions or these companies. And so all the sketchy people start coming out of the woodwork. And the most recent, we'll cover some of the older ones, but the most recent, the most insidious now are the individual that are paid for education classes or schooling. So some examples in the research that we gathered, some of the instances where there was a $15,000 tattooing course. Okay, become a tattoo artist, and if you spend $15,000 with us, we'll teach you how to become a tattoo artist. Well, the buy now, pay later split that up over 12 payments, so it was like $1,200 a month to pay for this education. It's not certified. They're not certified education centers like universities and colleges, junior colleges. They're just random businesses that are using education to do trade school. Cosmetology is a big one that's being affected now. Become a cosmetologist, spend $10,000 with us getting certified by your state standards to become a cosmetologist, a hairstylist, or esthetician, and we'll split up your $10,000 tuition over 12 months at whatever, $833 a month. Okay. So, but the problem is that the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau is coming down hard on these non-certified education offerings, and Klarna, PayPal, Afterpay, all these people are saying, yeah, let's finance it over time, and getting people into debt. And here's where the conflict is, that all of these companies, Klarna, Affirm, PayPal, are all saying, oh no, we vet the borrowers, right? But what's happening is that the underwriting criteria, the debt to income ratio, how much debt load, all of the underwriting that normal people go through when they get a credit card or when they get a real installment loan, they're not abiding by traditional lending methodologies, because they're just taking these on in kind of what is now being called shadow student debt. Shadow in the sense that they're not certified schools. They're actually for-profit companies that have these training programs, but they're getting more people into debt. Now, if you remember in the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, the last 3 decades, student loans were used for all of these different trade schools, some of them certified, some of them not, but people were getting tens of thousands of dollars of student debt, and the services or the schools were subpar or horrible. And there was this entire brouhaha where the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau said, no. You don't get to abuse consumers by not educating them, borrower education being the key, by not educating them on the risks engaging these money sources. Well, now that they put a kibosh on all these non-certified, there are massive rules now set up by the CFPB for these, for someone to be able to get a real student loan. It has to be certified, a certified school, and it has to have a certain number of students. You can't have 10 students in your school. There has to be a certain size and quantity and quality of the educational institution. Well, guess what happens next? These for-profit, non-certified education training schools pop up, and they're engaging these financial institutions, Klarna, Afterpay, Affirm, and PayPal, in order to finance their schools again. And we're right back into the 1990s, where it was just a cluster mess of abuse for uneducated or unsophisticated borrowers, not knowing that what the real cost of these financial packages are going to be. Now, while it looks cool, $10,000 divided by $831 over the month, and they're being sold that you can, remember, the schools that are using these financing options are selling the idea that 92% of our people are hired within 2 months after they graduate from our program, without any documentation, without any bona fides that their claims are true. That's what part of the certification process for an education organization actually requires. You have to show, case in point, when you say 92% of our people are hired within 3 months after they graduate, you've got to show the bona fides. You have to show the proof. You have to show what you are saying is true, or you don't get your certification. None of these organizations are doing that. And so somebody who wants to be a tattoo artist, I'm just picking people random, tattoo artist, cosmetology school, fly fishing school, whatever the devil they're signing up to learn, they're being sold this bill of goods that there's no proof that the affirmations by the school are true or accurate. And the money supply is investor pools. Klarna, Afterpay, Affirm, and PayPal, these are not banks, you guys. These are investor pools whose actuarial tables, their actual lending criteria is if we can, they may be profitable because they only pay the schools as collected. So you can choose lower costs if you pay as collected, or they may pay upfront. Well, some of these schools are only paying as collected, so it's profitable to these organizations. Every single payment that's made, it's profitable to the school because they have this stream of income over the 6 to 12 or more months. No bueno. And now, in 2020, this was getting so bad that the advocacy group called the Student Borrower Protection Center is an advocacy group. They put out a report. PayPal was the first one in the game because, as we know, buy now, pay later has arisen since COVID, since 2020. So they listed 150. So if you want to Google it, Student Borrower Protection Center, there's a report available of the 150 schools. For those of you, I'm using air quotes for everybody who's listening instead of watching. There's 150 of these training companies that were hot listed. PayPal put a kibosh on all 150 of them. And guess what happened? Right afterwards, Klarna, Affirm, Afterpay, boom, went in there and started financing the same 150 that were on this list of suspect or poor students were being marketed to and or misinformed about the benefits of a particular school or its certification. I mean, some of these schools are even using different terms than certified, right? Approved, authorized. They're using BS words to actually get borrower, the student, the buyer, to believe them. So you guys know that my entire end game is borrower education. And it's a big hill to climb because we're fighting against the profit motive, what can be unscrupulous organizations who are saying, we're just the money. We're just the money. We're not vetting the borrower. That's somebody else's problem. We're not vetting the student. That's the schools. We're just the money. BS. There's what's called fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary responsibility means that the more knowledgeable, more powerful party in an arrangement takes care of the interest, honestly takes care of the interest of the less knowledgeable or less powerful in the party in the arrangement. Lenders, by definition, in this country have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of the borrower, period. Lenders have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of the borrower. That doesn't mean the borrowers don't get to get educated. But until everybody is as smart in this system, when they're done with our training, when they're done listening to the very podcast you guys are listening to, we know more, so we can take care of ourselves. But until that moment, lenders, to be a lender in this country, it's de facto, they have to be the fiduciary and honor and respect the limitations and or unsophistication of the borrower. Once again, that is not happening. I want to mad props to PayPal. The second they got the list of this notice and did their own due diligence, they pulled funding from 150 organizations. They just stopped offering funding. So mad props to PayPal for seeing the truth and not focusing on the bottom line as much as their fiduciary responsibility to take care of borrowers in this country. Well, I'm calling out Klarna and Affirm and Afterpay, Klarna, Affirm, and Afterpay to join PayPal in making sure that you perform your fiduciary responsibility to borrowers, in making sure that that who you offer your financing services to are reputable and have the best interest of the borrower in mind, because you are the money. You are the facilitator. You make it happen. Without the money, the training and the trainee are not going to join forces. So as a facilitator, you got to take care of the borrower. The final thing here is that one of the worst things here is that they say, oh, it's interest-free if you pay the entire amount in 90 days, in 6 months, 12 months. It's interest-free. But if you don't pay in the agreed upon term of 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, they retroactively add interest all the way back to day zero, which then gives a huge higher than, and it's a premium interest rate for not keeping your agreement. And once again, whacks the borrower with way more charges than they perceived in the original agreement. Now, I am not taking the responsibility to be smart and sophisticated off the borrower. But we got to give the borrower a little bit of time to get through the fundability training so that they know what game is afoot. This is Merrill Chandler, your host of the Fundability Podcast. And please go to the Get Fundable Facebook page, put in questions, give us notes, tell us what you're up against. We will reach out to you. We want you to have the power. And worst case, go to www.fundabilitymastercourse.com and get educated. Fundabilitymastercourse.com and get the education you need to save yourself from all this freaking financial pain and suffering. Avoid the landmines that are blowing up your current and future opportunities. Be careful of buy now, pay later, because it is a seductive way to pay for a purchase. But if you do 2 or 3 more than you can handle, now you're in way more debt and you've obligated yourself way above and beyond. So I'm not taking responsibility off of you, the borrower. I am putting responsibility on the lender. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you gotta tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.